Welcome to the first episode of Higher Talent, where we've already managed to make some mistakes. But you know what? We're going to make this a little bit of a speedy podcast because why do a full hour long thing rather than just move forward? So we're going to quickly go through two major points of news. What with Dan right now, of course, Dan DDK right here with me, Phoebe Dualism with a terrible name tag on Twitter. But you know what? Let's just run through it. First of all, I mean, I had to get that in again, even if I did mess it up the first time. First of all, we have ESL Pro League. We've got the group stage. We already kind of talked about this a little bit, so let's speed it up a bit. Who do you think is going through for Group A? Reminder again, Group A is, of course, G2, Greyhound, Fnatic, NRG, Astralis, Cloud9, Daytona, and Heroic. 3 teams will be going forward. One of them will be into the semifinals straight. That will be the first seed, and the other 2 will be going into the quarterfinals. What do you think, Dan?
So I think, first things first, this is the tournament that that you can't expect Astralis not to do serious damage in. There's no incredibly crazy contenders right now with like the form of all these teams. They should be the ones in the final with Team Liquid. I think it's fairly established, so I don't think we'll expect any upsets, especially given the fact that Cloud9's form is so awful. I think Heroic is a team to keep your eye on because I think that they have a lot of potential. I think Blame F is definitely one to look at. He's a great up-and-coming talent. He leads this team, so someone to keep your eye on. I think one of the storylines as well for me is obviously Fnatic NRG is Fnatic feel like they're sort of stuck at the moment, kind of like where they're at, but they're pretty consistent. Generally speaking, and they're very experienced. But NRG, it's gonna be interesting. Obviously, Dabs is playing, but he's not gonna be in the lineup after this tournament, so they'll have Stan in there. So we could see something explosive, or we could see something the opposite. I guess it depends, but they'll definitely have that element of we don't have anything to lose type thing for this tournament, which you never want it, but if it happens, it happens. And I actually expect G2 to do fairly well because I think that they have a fire under their collective asses, given that even though they are performing better now, it's taken them so long to get to this point. I think G2 being such a huge org, they need a big team. I think the pressure is on. I think that this lineup is not going to have legs for too much longer if they don't start getting the results. So given this the group looking the way that it does, I would anticipate that there's a pretty decent shot that G2 can potentially make it, but I would expect NRG Astralis to be the front runners for this one, and Fnatic to be on their heels, nipping at their heels.
Well, I know you want to jump in on G2 over there, Phoebe. So what do you think? Can G2 make it out into the top 3? Is there any particular team you're looking at that you think G2 is going to just kind of rip their throats out?
I mean, they, I don't condone animal abuse, but they're going to murder that Greyhound. And I think that G2, in their home nation, you don't often get a chance to have French events, which I always think is really surprising. And with a really good showing in Dallas, Shox and Kenny, not at the same time, but they're kind of coming alive a bit more now. And Amanek has been, even though stats-wise, when you look at it, he's not exactly, this like he was on LDLC when he was playing at a lower tier. He is the consistent player that they kind of have needed, and with Body out of the way because he wasn't that, I think that I have faith that G2 are going to have a pretty good run here. And I think Astralis are pretty much the obvious other team to kind of make it out. I think it's, even though they struggled at ECS, and they've had the sort of monkey on their back about Blast, considering their competition being Cloud9 and probably Heroic, I'll throw them in there. And yeah, it's got to be NRG.
Maybe, but you think NRG is going to lose out, not Fnatic, in the battle for the top 3?
Oh, you're putting pressure on me here. Depends which version of Fnatic we see, which is the cop-out answer. I see a world in which Fnatic just would be NRG, but I think that there is a lot to be said for a team that plays with nothing to lose, which is something that we see a lot, where a team just goes, oh, do you know what? This is our last tournament. We might as well just do stuff that we wouldn't normally do and just play relatively loosely. And I think that a lot of teams do thrive without the pressure. And I think maybe that is what NRG needs. I don't see them making a final or anything, but I see a world where they do all right.
Right, so final note from Phoebe is G2, Fnatic, and Astralis. Dan, give me your 3 teams.
Yeah, I think Astralis, NRG, and Fnatic. I think for me, I do think G2 have a good shot, but I think I'm going with those 3.
All right, so that's going to be that over there. On the other side of the group, so this is where things get a little bit more interesting because we have a lot more contenders. And it's FaZe Clan versus Tyloo, North versus Team Liquid, Mousesports versus MIBR, Hellraisers versus Luminosity. Now, Tyloo is a team that I'm pretty sure we can discount along with Luminosity. We don't really need to talk too much about them. Tyloo's had a recent roster change, and Luminosity has unfortunately been consistently disappointing, even though there is, of course, a chance that the Furia win puts a little bit of fire into them, but let's kind of gloss over them for the sake of time. FaZe, North, Liquid, Mousesports, MIBR, Hellraisers. That is a lot of people who can get out of a group, Dan.
Yeah, I quickly do want to do 1 point on Luminosity. I want to have it on record, my disappointment in them, and if they're listening, just watch some demos, please. Something. Anyway, moving forwards, as you say, I feel like MIBR is also a team, as you mentioned, likewise to Luminosity, that some heads have been turned with Furious performances, and MIBR is kind of a weird thing because their whole brand is that they are the best in Brazil, and they made the lineup fully Brazilian again, partly due to, well, not specifically for that reason, but because obviously it's like, it didn't work. Having these new players, maybe getting the old lineup together could help out, getting Taco back in there and so on and so forth, and it's still sort of not quite worked out. So it's pretty difficult to really truly understand some of the issues that they have, because sometimes they show up. Sometimes they play really well, and other times they struggle enormously. So it's I think it's going to be a super interesting matchup, because Mousesports, we also don't quite know what their ceiling really looks like. They've got an incredible pool of talent, which Carrigan's been working with, and obviously, like, it just feels like it makes so much sense, because Carrigan is the guy. Like, if you're gonna hand pick someone to kind of help to groom that team of talent, you probably take Carrigan's definitely top 2 probably pick, I would imagine. So I would imagine that given the amount of time that they've had together, I think their map pool is strong enough. I feel pretty confident that they're going to be able to take down MIBR, and that they're going to be a lock-in for that top 3. I actually am going to go with North and Liquid as well. Ooh. I think North will actually have... So I'm going to kind of obviously have FaZe getting edged out here by either North or Mousesports, because even though North have their issues, from what I saw at ECS, again, even though like the results were as they were, I felt kind of confident in how they were trying to approach the game, and how they were activating Yugi in the way that they were, whereby they made him that AWPer that is in a different spot every single round. You can never know where he's going to be. And I like that style of AWPing for him, and I could see that for him, he was resonating with it. He was performing well with it. It was a role that was working. And something that North have always had difficulty with, obviously, is having a good AWPer. And so I'm hoping that the building around that and Valley's leadership, that's going to actually kind of maybe give them something. Like, I'm being very optimistic about North here, which I hear myself doing it, and I'm like questioning myself at the same time, but I feel optimistic for North. And FaZe with Neo, I think I wonder if that last tournament of theirs was just some kind of like a honeymoon type situation. Yeah. We'll see.
Baby, talk to me a bit about Hellraisers, because they're another one of those teams that could have some upset potential with the kind of firepower that they're packing, with the guns that they have.
I think this is a weird point about Hellraisers, but somebody I know interviewed Angel back during the Face It Major with their old lineup with... I can't remember who got replaced. Bear with me.
Woxic was there.
Yes, but that...
And Dead Fox.
It was Dead Fox. Yes, that's the one. And he asked Angel, if you could play with one player, who would you like to play? Hobbit. He immediately jumped in and said, I really want to play with Hobbit. He's now got a team where he doesn't have Hobbit. And Dead Fox was interviewed by Alan, and Dead Fox said, oh yeah, Woxic and Angel, they're always fighting. Literally straight up said, yeah, Woxic will try and do something stupid. Angel will say, yo, don't do that. And Woxic will just start yelling at him and just saying, no, I know what I'm doing.
I could see that conversation happening.
Yeah, and I think the fact that if Hellraisers and Mousesports meet in that initial upper bracket, it's going to be really interesting to see whether Carrigan has kind of manage to rein Woxic in, because he's used to dealing with ego, and whether you can rein someone like Woxic in while keeping his impact, and whether Hellraiser's with Oscar going up against, a few players he knows, but generally something he doesn't know. I think that's kind of a really interesting little clash that will go down in that upper bracket for Hellraisers, especially when they lost to some, was it fours they lost to in some online games recently?
Something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
4-16, and it was just, they're a weird one at the moment for me.
Here's the thing for me, for this group in particular, is that you kind of have to see that, okay, fine, I think Liquid's going to be number 1, I think Mousesports is going to be number 2, and then number 3 is a little bit difficult. FaZe is the obvious pick when you go to just name value, but then you have to look at who has the potential to upset. That's where North, MIBR, and of course Hellraisers come in. Hellraisers just for the sake, they've got a puncher's chance. I don't think MIBR is doing anything. I think MIBR looks terrible. I don't think that they're going to be doing anything this tournament. Quite frankly, I think they're going to bomb out of groups unless they have a magical, stoic performance, with a nice little turn back to maybe something like Vertisport at Epicenter 2017. But now it comes down to, okay, who's more likely to upset FaZe? Is it Hellraisers? I honestly don't think so, because like you said, Hellraisers doesn't really have much of a chance considering the fact that they just recently lost to Fours, etc. Now, they do have a chance, but I don't favor them over FaZe. I think I still pick FaZe. Then becomes the question of FaZe versus North. And although, Dan talked about earlier about how North is activating Yugi very well, even if you're activating him, this is still a player who we haven't seen tested at the highest of levels. We haven't seen him tested against the best of AWPers. And look at who FaZe has. FaZe has Guardian. FaZe has Nico. So you already have 2 players who are probably going to be lighting up the scoreboard already. Guardian's a soldier. He's going to track through. Nico's almost simple. That's the best thing I can say about him. So you already see Valde and Yugi kind of being counted out. And that's where I feel like FaZe takes it away. So I think there won't be that many upsets here, even if there's a chance for that. So Liquid, Mousesports, and FaZe is what I have. Now, one thing that I want to quickly talk about is the playoffs. I actually think Astralis isn't going to make finals in this, because Mousesports is going to go, obviously, play off against the next side of the bracket, and I think that Mousesports is going to end up versus Astralis in the semi-finals. Mousesports has Carrigan. He has always known how to counter Astralis. Astralis is under so much pressure right now. They've always had a choking issue. I don't think they're making finals, Dan.
Yes, it's a crazy one, because obviously Astralis were beginning to see the cracks, and the cracks didn't really show initially. After the Blastralis thing and began to sort of, I guess, get to them, after it became a actual thing, they started to lose events. Like they lost, well, I think they'd already lost the Blast event, and then they lose another one,
Madrid.
And then it's all of a sudden it's like, okay, no worries, guys. We're going to play ECS, and we're going to get longer tournament format. Everything's gonna be fine. They lose ECS, and you can see that there were a lot of issues. You got Dupree, flipping off the camera device, punching the monitor. Like they're not looking cool and collected. They're not looking like that team where, like, even if they're down 115. You're pretty confident that if there's any team that can grind it back, it's Astralis, because they're so confident. They kind of lost this. So there's this thing that you get when you're the best in the world, where it's this, because everything insofar as I think confidence goes, runs on narratives and expectations in that sense. And so you build up this narrative that gets validated time and time again, where you win all the time. So what it does is it actually really it strengthens your resilience enormously when you're in situations whereby some team is beating you, or you're down a lot, or you're getting really unlucky and you're having a really hard game, because you, in the back of your mind, you don't have to dig that deep, because you just inherently know that we're the best and we're going to prevail somehow. And so it kind of helps you to keep you focused and keep all those negative thoughts kind of at bay, so you can really make sure that you maintain that flow state. Everyone can maintain that focus as much as possible. And that's, I think, something that they've now just lost. And I think because of the ring rust on top of that they've clearly been experiencing, and also the Blastralis pressure, just like all this stuff at once has hit them. And I think that they're struggling to deal with that, and they're having to, and so this tournament is also set up. It's set up for them to get to the finals.
Yeah.
Because we're missing some of the big dogs, and we're seeing a lot of lineups that are kind of experimental, need some time, or are disappointing. Like all the teams are interesting, but compared to what Astralis was, Astralis need to be in the finals with Liquid. If they're not, I think there's going to be problems.
There's definitely going to be problems with it. I actually just realized very quickly is that if Astralis doesn't come out on top of their group, they are probably going to be facing off against Liquid in the semi-finals. So that would be even before finals. And on that topic, actually, the only way G2 makes it to finals, Phoebe, because that was your earlier prediction, is if G2 finishes out on top of their group. Because I'm assuming you don't have them going out over Liquid. Who do you think is going to make it to the finals, Phoebe?
I still have to have faith in G2. Trust me. Like I have to be a blind fangirl in this case because it's interesting. I'm not gonna put money on it, but it's interesting.
If you had to put money on it, who's going to the finals?
Do I have to really be boring and say probably Astralis? Like really? You're gonna make me say it? Yeah. I mean, it's the obvious pick, and I mean it's been 3 months coming that Astralis and Team Liquid need to face off again, so that they can get their legitimate victory over the evil Blastralis. Ha ha ha! It's written in the stars, really, isn't it?
I find that very interesting.
Nice.
So I think that Astralis is eliminated in semifinals, maybe even quarters, to be honest, if they face off against Mousesports there, and then Mousesports makes it to the final. Team Liquid chokes against Mousesports because Team Liquid has gotten things better a little bit, but they haven't actually gotten to a point where you can solidly say they've got everything under control. And when you keep in mind Karrigan's team will have done a lot of research on them, and that there isn't much research to do on Mousesports, there's actually a very big chance that Mousesports ends up winning EPL Season 9. So that's my prediction right here and now. Mousesports is going to beat Team Liquid in the finals, 3-1, right there, best of 5. Karrigan is in the ball pit. He's got the map veto. He's got everything. The man is a beast. The man is a legend. He's taking it home. And speaking of taking it home, we're going to take the podcast home with one last topic. We've got the Dreamhack press release coming out earlier, which is the Rising Stars press release, which says that Dreamhack Open winners will be going to Dreamhack Masters and Dreamhack Showdown will be going into Dreamhack Open. Now, I'm not going to talk about Open to Masters. I think that's something that's not particularly controversial. I think that's something most people would be okay with. It's a very legitimate qualifier. Dreamhack Showdown is a female-only tournament that is happening in Valencia in July. That going directly into Dreamhack Open is something that I raise some eyebrows at. Phoebe, what are your thoughts at it?
I don't like it as a concept at all because I think it is somewhat... It's basically giving a handicapped spot to a female team when actually I think as a competitor and also as a woman who likes CS, I want to see the best CS possible. I don't want to see a female team that just gets given a spot, just out of, winning a tournament where none of the teams that would be in an open qualifier for the event would be, when actually that's not satisfying to me. I would much rather see one of the big female teams like a CLG Red come out into a qualifier out of nowhere, just absolutely destroy a bunch of NA qualifier male teams and make it to a DreamHack Open. And I think that female-only tournaments are important, and I have no problem with DreamHack Showdown, because actually that is what's going to grow the female scene. And eventually there will be teams that are good enough to go through qualifiers and make events, or have made enough of an impact in events to get up the rankings even and get invites. That isn't now, and I think just having a spot for a female team just to kind of... It feels very much like oh look guys, we're the first ones to do this, we're really helping the female scene, rather than it being about, oh, this is good competition. Because if it was about good competition, you'd encourage female teams to sign up for the open qualifier, which is how every other team should go. And there is no rule saying a female team or a mixed team can't enter and qualify for these events.
Dan?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's kind of bittersweet in some senses, because it's cool to see, as mentioned, these initiatives into the female scene to help kind of grow it and foster talent and bring it up and inspire people to be like, oh, actually, I could go to a tournament and actually figure out that that's something that's super fun and something to work towards. Because I think that's a really big deal, is having things that you can work towards. But indeed, competitive integrity is always going to be the most important thing. It's a sport, effectively, so it's by far the most important thing. And so you can be really careful if you ever come across something and it's going to mess with that at all, that concept, then you got to understand whether or not it's for the right reasons, or like the context has to make sense in some regard. And I feel like it is a weird one, because yeah, they could just play the qualifiers like everyone else, kind of how the system does tend to work. So seeing them directly into the tournament doesn't really make any sense. Seeing them directly into qualifiers can only make sense if it's not like very deep. Because if it's again at any point, like it's got to be a meritocracy as far as the teams are concerned. You know, you have to win and lose by merit. And if it's something that allows them to play a LAN qualifier or something like that, that's also a different story. You know, if it's the question of having to if you need the funding or something to go to a LAN qualifier, which you otherwise wouldn't have, and that's kind of like what you win, so that at least you can have more female teams present, but they don't get a leg up on the competition. Then that's cool. But it does feel like it's I mean, there's an argument as well that it's potentially harmful to the end goal, which presumably they have, which is to involve more female teams too, just because you don't want to send the wrong message, and you don't want people to rely on these tournaments as well, like a crutch. Like if you want to be a great Counter-Strike player, you have to play great Counter-Strike, and that doesn't really have a gender. You know, great Counter-Strike is great Counter-Strike, can be played by anybody. So yes, it's a bit of a weird one. Yeah, I don't know what to think.
So I think a fair compromise would probably be, you know, because I think we're all kind of unanimous that maybe the Open tournament itself, which is a 100K tournament where, you know, top 20 HLTV teams are coming, you know, top 25 even. That's a very prestigious spot. At the end of the day, we acknowledge that even if the female pro scene has been improving, and that's something that Dan, you talked about earlier on, is that the female scene has gotten a lot better, but it's still not there yet. Let's be honest. We don't have any females. We have very few females in FPL. We have very few females even in FPLC. There is a level discrepancy. What I think would be a fair leg up, because at the end of the day, you have to give them a leg up for something like this to work, is kind of interclosed qualifiers. And that's what Dan was talking about right now as well, which is, you know, how deep are you going in? Even the closed qualifiers are pretty prestigious. There's viewership for them. There's proper casting for them. There's proper competition for them. You know, that's high up. And then you don't have to go through the hassle of potentially being eliminated in a single bracket open qualifier. Closed qualifiers generally have a group stage. They generally have something on the lines of a Swiss system. At the very least, you have more chances as well. So I think that would be a good compromise. I think this might be going a bit too far. And honestly, if I'm being cynical, I might even say that this is a bit of a cash grab, because at the end of the day, female tournaments and everything have a different sort of sponsorship money. They have a different budget coming in. And with this, it might be possible that Dreamhack is kind of just trying to monetize their open circuit a little bit more effectively, considering that it has been having declining viewership recently as well. This could just be an additional little cash grab. But I think that's about it. Any final thoughts before we end this for the second time?
Yeah, I've got an extra thought or two on the female CS thing, actually, because so like one of the big things about like improving in anything, I guess, is this idea of cross-pollination. And, you know, when you're like, let's say, you know, you suddenly break into a new tier of Counter-Strike, right? You know, you like it used to be in the old days that, you know, you'd have like these pug channels on ILC that would be like invite only. And if you got good enough, you could like maybe join if you know people, and all of a sudden you'd be exposed to, I mean, obviously we have that with like, you know, the hubs and stuff, and like, you know, the matchmaking ranks and levels and everything like that. But you would have be exposed to a much smaller community of an elite group of players. And there's this cross-pollination effect where when you start playing with those players, you get significantly better very quickly. Like you because you pick up so many small things that they just show you, and you're around it constantly. You're just absorbing it, and that's a huge boon to you as a player. And I feel like one of the issues as well with the female CS is we don't really have that so much, because a lot of the girl players are not really mixing with the guys too much in these team environments. And I think that is something that artificially is, or I shouldn't say artificially, but it's directly harming the growth, because I feel like there's not a necessity for that. I mean, a cool initiative could be to actually have a mixed tournament. Maybe that could be something that would be kind of interesting to try to promote that. But as you say, like even as a cash grab, I'm almost skeptical as well, because as far as viewership is concerned, you know, that's I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how you really look at it like that, because you're not going to be getting a lot of the. Yeah, no. It's like that's definitely not a thing.
Just to clarify, I meant more that as far as sponsorship budgets go, we know that there are different sponsorship budgets for female tournaments compared to for male, or for mixed tournaments. From different companies. So IEM sponsoring a female tournament at Katowice doesn't mean that the money for everyone goes down. It just means additional money for females. So I meant in that sense, we might be seeing more money going in, because now there's a specific female only slot. So you might be able to kind of tap into that budget too.
Gotcha. Well, I guess it will forever be a controversial
mystery.
subject, at least for the next few years. If you want Counter-Strike, hopefully it gets there. But I would imagine that like anything we can do to inspire people is usually a good thing. So
Yeah.
hopefully they find a way to make it work and they don't harm the competitive integrity.
Hopefully.
So yeah, don't talk about that now.
Yeah, I think we can end on that topic. I think Phoebe's done as well. All right, so that being said, thank you all for tuning in. This was just a quick heads up. This will always be a much longer podcast in the future. It's just I messed up the audio completely, which means that we probably just lost about an hour and a bit of footage earlier on. So Dan, thank you so much for helping us out right there and, staying on for longer. We really appreciate it. And do you have anyone you want to shout out to really quickly before we end it?
No, I mean, thank you for having me on. Shout out to my girlfriend for being awesome. I think she can hear me. So, so
shout out to Dan's girlfriend.
And shout out to my awesome cat as well. And
yes, that was one that Phoebe was very excited about. Phoebe, do you want to have any closing thoughts?
No. I mean, Dan's cat's cute. That's about all I have to say.
And yeah, we're gonna be ending the podcast now. Thank you all for tuning in, and see you next week.